Hello everyone out there, this is Alexander F. Onilere from Kellabong Crypto to give you my take on the Black Swan that happened yesterday.
The markets are crashing. This could be one of the biggest red days ever. We'll break it down.
So we've just seen the biggest liquidation event that's actually ever occurred in crypto's history, and it's absolute pandemonium in the market.
Everything is down. We are definitely seeing the biggest liquidation event ever in crypto history.
This move has completely shocked me. It's one of the biggest, most destructive moves I've seen across the crypto market in my last 6 years trading crypto.
The biggest crypto crash in history, $19 billion liquidated.
Welcome to another episode. And what the hell happened yesterday? We have to discuss what happened.
The last 24 hours in crypto have been the most brutal 24 hours I've ever seen in this industry.
As I was heading towards the Royal Marsden Hospital for a blood test, I got a notification from my phone and I suddenly realized that the real blood test was on my phone. We got wrecked yesterday. A Black Swan event that was the biggest ever on crypto. 19 billion was liquidated.
This is one of the most brutal liquidation events ever to happen in crypto. You look at the liquidations, they're talking about $19 billion worth of liquidations in the last 24 hours. But that's not really the whole story. And I'll show you how these oracles were actually broken and that this doesn't tell the whole story. I've never been in crypto and never seen a day where you have tokens going almost to zero. I mean, just look at this. TON went to 55 cents. Lido went to 25 cents. Atom on certain exchanges, Atom, the Cosmos token, the Cosmos Atom token, actually went to zero. What we saw last night, what we saw in the last 24 hours was a systematic collapse of a certain sector in crypto. And I want to break it down for you. I want to show you this was not a coincidence. This was a systematic collapse.
The top 10 whales in crypto liquidated.
And 5 of them wiped out their entire account. Now, I can tell you, I spoke to some of the biggest traders in the game, friends of mine in the game, guys that these are the biggest whales out there, and they got completely destroyed last night.
So what happened? From what I'm getting, it has something to do with Xi Jinping trying to control earth metals and sort of trying to keep it out of the hands of Americans. This riled Donald Trump so much, he decided to go 100% tariff on their ass. Let's hear some of the take of the influencers from Coin Bureau.
On Thursday, the 9th of October, China announced new export controls on rare earth minerals, a critical component in everything from iPhones to F-35 fighter jets. This was a strategic power play by Beijing, and it did not go unnoticed. On Friday morning, President Trump fired his first warning shot on Truth Social, threatening a, quote, massive increase in tariffs on Chinese goods. This initial threat was enough to rattle the markets, with Wall Street's fear gauge, the VIX, soaring 32%. And Bitcoin began to bleed, dipping from the $122,000 level to around $117,000. In a second decisive post, Trump declared that the United States would impose a 100% tariff on all Chinese imports, quote, over and above any tariff that they are currently paying. Trump hit the send button and the floor fell out of the crypto market.
Hayes ran from Crypto Banter.
So let's look at the scenario. Let's look at the synopsis. What happened? It started off when Trump, again, posted something about China. And he spoke about China and he said something along the lines of that they had done something untoward when it came to rare earth minerals. Now remember, China controlled the majority of the world's rare earth minerals, which are required in very sensitive production and stuff like that. And Trump came out and said that he couldn't believe something that China had done around rare earth minerals. He said, it has just learned that China, I have just learned, has taken an extraordinarily aggressive position in trade in sending an extremely hostile letter to the world, stating that they were going to, effective November 1, impose a large-scale export control on virtually every product they make, and some not even made by them. This affects all countries without exception, and was obviously a plan devised by them a year ago. It's absolutely unheard of in international trade and a moral disgrace in dealing with other nations. Based on that, China has taken this unprecedented position and speaking only for the US and not for other nations who are similarly threatened. Starting 1 November, we're going to have tariffs. Now, if you go back to Feb, you can see right here, that's when, or somewhere here, that's when we had the Trump tariff tantrum, and that started quite a long downturn. That was the day where we had all those big liquidations and everything else. Initially, he threatened to cancel his meeting with President Xi, which he's supposed to have next month in November. I mean, you listen to the press conference, you tell me what you make of it.
Have you canceled your meeting with President Xi? And
no, I haven't canceled, but I don't know that we're going to have it. But I'm going to be there regardless, so I would assume we might have it. But, they hit the world with something that really is not anything that people are going to do. And it was shocking. I can tell you, Howard and I and Todd, we all, Scott, we were all speaking about it before, and we said, where did that come from? It was that was out of the blue, right? We're going to have to see what happens. That's why I made it November 1st. We'll see what happens. Yeah.
So initially, the market started to collapse. That's what happened to the S&P 500. That's pretty much the stock heat map of the S&P 500. If you look at it on a chart, what you can see is that the S&P 500 went down about 4%, so about 3.37%. It went down yesterday. The Nasdaq, similar story. I mean, these candles look scary, but ultimately, remember, we are coming from all-time highs, and the Nasdaq went down about 5% if you look at it from top to bottom.
And here's Paul Barron's take from Paul Barron Network.
I want to start off with what we think is going on, and part of this is this war between the U.S. and China when it comes to tariffs. This, of course, is the S&P 500 falling 70 points. This is in reference to President Trump publishing that China is going to get hit with more tariffs. So something is pissing him off, and he is going head-to-head. In fact, so much so that he's going to hold a conference later today to really go into this. But while that is happening, 200 mil liquidated from the cryptocurrency market in the past 15 minutes. This could get really bloody, guys, going into a very bloody weekend, where all of this plays into one thing, and that is the message that the United States is sending to China. Let me play shot one.
The president posting a lengthy post on social media here, but in it, he's threatening unspecified retaliation against the Chinese side. He also seems here to cancel his scheduled meeting that's coming up with President Xi Jinping of China. The president here saying this was a real surprise, not only to me, but to all the leaders of the free world. The president going on to say that the Chinese letters about rare earths were especially inappropriate, and that this was the day that, after 3,000 years of bedlam and fighting, there is peace in the Middle East. I wonder if the timing was coincidental. So the president here objecting not only to the Chinese move on rare earths, but to the fact that it appears to have stepped on the news of his apparent peace agreement with Israel and Hamas.
It creates volatility. It opens up opportunities for those who are ready to take it.
Paul Barron there. The real scenario that I believe happened is the one postulated by Coin Bureau, where it's saying that some whale or big whale was dealing with cross margin with Bitcoin, Solana, and Ethereum. During the cascade, the altcoins, Sui, Atom, went in to fill that gap in order to stop full liquidation happening. And because the whale had so much big bags of altcoins, it just swallowed up all these altcoins and took the liquidation of altcoins down to zero. That's the scenario I think happened. And some people are saying it could be Wintermute or some other big market maker. Let's listen to what Coin Bureau has to say.
So from Arthur Hayes, word on the street is that Big Sex's auto liquidation of collateral tied to cross margin position is why lots of alts got smoked on the move down. It's basically saying that prices are probably not going to have another scam wick like that for a while. But just to translate that into plain English for you guys. So as some of you will know, like basically when it comes to leverage trading, there's kind of two ways you can do it. You typically the classical way you could say is you deposit USDT, and then that's kind of like your collateral, right? And let's say you deposit $100 USDT, you're going 10x long on Bitcoin, hypothetically. Bitcoin falls by 10%, then your $100 of USDT basically gets liquidated, so that basically gets sold off, you could say. So that's like the classical, let's say, like leverage trading. What larger players tend to do and like more advanced traders tend to do is they will do something called cross margin, which is basically where, again, hypothetically you have the same scenario, $100 going 10x long on Bitcoin, Bitcoin falls 10%, but instead of liquidating your 100 USDT, it basically looks at what else is in your crypto exchange account and it starts selling that, if that makes any sense. So what Arthur is basically saying here, what could have happened is that there was probably some either large trader or market maker or whoever who basically was, for example, long Bitcoin or long Ethereum, and they had this cross margin thing enabled. And what basically happened is that Bitcoin dropped like more than they expected. And then in some large account, and it could be multiple accounts, again, no one really knows what's going on there. But what basically happened is that someone was either long Bitcoin or long Ethereum or long Solana. There was this liquidation, kind of like basically these other altcoins were liquidated to protect their large position, their large long position in Bitcoin, Ethereum, or Solana. Again, the magnitude is like something like 7 to 10 times larger than any liquidation event we've ever seen in crypto's history.
And this is what Ivan and Tech had to say on the matter.
Where do we go from here? Will we come back quickly? Will we not come back quickly? Are all's fully dead? When will the cycle peak be? The first thing we have to consider now is that when you have such damage to the chart, like I already mentioned, don't worry that it's gonna be super quick up and now we're gonna fly and you're gonna miss the bounce. We don't know exactly which scenario is gonna play out. It's all about positioning yourself so you're well no matter what happens. So one part of that is having stop loss, obviously. The second thing is to realize that we may be in a scenario where the cycle has peaked. It's a real scenario, especially if this trend continues and we go below here towards the low hundreds. And especially if we go below. Now, the good thing is, for now, in terms of the trend, is that this dump right here canceled the previous candle. So the bear flip on the weekly is now back to 96. So we do have a bit of room here before the bear flip. The first thing is, don't revenge trade. Don't think that you're going to miss the pump, because you're not going to miss the pump. If cycle is finito, normally you do get a big, strong, convincing pump, not to all-time high, but that lures everyone in again and kind of pretends to be pumped to all-time high. So that's something to watch out for.
That's Ivan on Takes. The biggest centralized exchanges like Binance, BitGet, Mexi, Coinbase, Bitmat were the ones who showed that they had weak legs, didn't quite hold up as the decentralized exchanges held up. And this was because they were probably fed kind of the wrong oracle. So we still have to see if Chainlink was involved and if Pith was involved. What am I doing? Well, I'm probably not going to Solana Breakpoint in Abu Dhabi in December. And I'm probably going to have to change my Christmas plans. But let's look to some of the big influencers and see what advice and what they're going to do. Well, here's some advice from Tom Lee of the Ethereum Godfather or marketing champion.
We've had a nice rise of 36% since the April lows, and I believe today's decline is the biggest in more than 6 months. But it's good to see the VIX spike. The VIX spiked at 1.29% today. That's the 51st largest ever spike in the VIX. So we're a top 1% move in sort of what I'd say the market seeking safety. And so I think it's a good flush that's happening today. I would like to say the market is concerned, but unless there is a real structural change, this pullback is a buying opportunity.
So a lot of people are celebrating, and although those people may be correct, and there is still a substantial risk that the trap that started yesterday is not over with.
Well, that's it for now. I'm not totally wrecked. Probably have to adjust to the new era of maybe 3 months of sideways before we carry on with the bull run. And probably it's time for me to launch my own crypto business. So until next time, this is Alexander F. O'Neilary saying, catch you next time.